Who resides at 1956? I'm sorry, I can't read the handwriting on the first,
His phone number is.
whose phone number is 593-4072? Oh, I'm sorry, you can come right up to the podium. I'm sorry,
Writing's better than
you'll
that.
have to spell your name.
It's Doris Nagfarquhar, and it's spelled correctly on there and visible.
Could you please spell your name for the record?
Doris, capital M-A-C, capital F-A-R-Q-U-H-A-R.
Thank you.
I
Before you,
reside at 195 East Pearl Street, and I'm a resident of Wellsville.
okay, I'll start your 5 minutes now. Go ahead.
Pardon?
I'll start your 5 minutes now.
It's a bit awkward being first. Mr. Otero, a non-resident of Wellsville, bought a building in our prime downtown business district and then paid no attention to past practice of use of the adjacent parking lot, which for well over 65 years that I can account for, has served the surrounding and Main Street businesses. Super Duper, now the growing business hub, Davies, now the Chamber, Searles Newsstand, Howard's, which is our brewery, Grant's, Rockwell's, Brown and Stout, and others replaced by current businesses. After haggling with the village, he decided to make money from the village by renting his portion for use, disregarding that for the past 65 or more years, the village paved, sealed, striped, plowed, and maintained that space for the use of patrons of all the surrounding and nearby businesses, as it does the rest of the municipal lot and the businesses around it. Then he decided to add storage units to the space and prevent parking. He apparently did not get accurate zoning and code information from the village, which has fire limits from Plant 1 to the hospital, permitting no wooden construction. Is there a stamped plan and building permit, proper setbacks and access throughout his lot coverage? Without those required permits, his commercial property continued with his plan. Unfortunately, having not used the proper zoning and code laws, the village decided on eminent domain proceedings on September 11th, and they should never have been needed. Now, most important, I think those who should be the concerned citizens are those 25 or so local businesses, resident-owned businesses, who've been working for months with the Wellsville, New York Forward program to earn their $4.5 million in grant money to meet the goals of enhancing and transforming our downtown and living and quality of life, preserving historic space, adding business plans that attract investment in Wellsville, and increase our tax revenue. Those stated goals fly in the face of this gross misuse of our municipal parking lot. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next up is Clint Gilkey, 25 Fairview.
My name's Clinton Gilkey, 25 Fairview Avenue, Wellsville.
Thank you. You may begin.
There are 3, perhaps 4 businesses that would be affected by this acquiring of the storage sheds in that parking area. That will impact those villages, or those businesses, without any doubt. I understand, I'm a recent relative of, or recent village resident. I came here in the early 70s. Many of my friends and colleagues have been here their whole life. So I can't tell you how far back that I remember this to be a parking lot, but it's been, seems like forever. And I think that this area should maintain as a parking area. I should note that my understanding is that the village has maintained this parking area both from a paving point of view and a snow removal part of view forever, as long as most of us here could probably remember. So I also
I'm sorry.
didn't note that I serve on the Village Economic Development Board. And I'm very much in favor of this parking area, maintaining its parking facility for those businesses that are in its there's three or four surrounding areas that border this parking area that would be impacted, as well as those businesses on Main Street where people would park and then go through the alleys to the Main Street. So I'd be very much in favor of continuing this area as a parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is John Gardner, 125 Maple.
Well, good evening, everyone. The board, I recognize a lot of friendly faces here in the village offices and have many close friends sitting in front of me. When I came down, I was concerned about really understanding the purpose, the public use for this. It's very clear. I've been here a long time. I came to Wellsville in the late 40s. It's a joke. I was born in the late 40s. So anyway, and I'm glad to follow after Clint in speaking. We have some things outside of Wellsville that are very dear to our hearts. In any case, I understand how important parking is right here. That's very convenient. If I look out the back of my windows, I can look right down in that whole area. I live in Maple Avenue. So I see a lot of benefits, public use benefits. And of course, the public benefits for people being able to come into Wellsville and shop on Main Street and find that parking to be very accessible. I don't know the ins and outs of all the negotiations that have gone on, but I would suggest, let's say if the village is successful in obtaining the land through this procedure, that it really gets some word out there to people so everybody understands how important this public use, this public land is to the use of the town. What scares me is anything close to government taking something away from me based upon some rule that they have that doesn't consider well enough my freedoms and liberties. Like if I bought a piece of property and the towns or village decided they really wanted it and needed it, I was the owner of that land, and it should be recognized as such, and for owners to be treated well and compensated well, so everybody feels good about it. I think you all got the feeling of what I was saying about government taking things from us that we feel are ours based upon law. I understand this eminent domain is part of the Constitution also. So please give that some consideration, let's say, in implementing the program if it goes through. Thank you.
Before you start, can you please spell your name for the record?
Yes, first name is John, Jon, no H in me. Middle initial S and last name Gardner.
Thank you.
Gardner.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, if you've signed in on the sign-in sheet, when you begin, please start by stating your name and address and spelling it for the stenographer. Next up is Don Cunningham. Come on up to the podium.
Hi, my name's Don Cunningham. I live at 4494 State Route 19. Now, a lot of it, I see you said there wasn't questions. I had a lot of questions while it was going on. But I do not believe in taking a man's property. It upsets me, you know, because a person works hard for that property, and I understand that that property was there and it was utilized in this village for parking. But at the end of the day, it was up for sale for so long, no one bought it, no one cleared it up, no one tried to do anything about it. Now this man invested his living trying to bring businesses into our area, and they want to take it from him. And I don't believe in taking from someone, especially when they work hard. I guess that's pretty much all I got to say. You know, we all work hard for what we have, you know. And just compensation, and if you try to give them, you gotta remember too, what it might feel you wanna give him might be not what it's worth to him. He's in this for a business, just like the next person is, you know, to make money. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next up is Jeremy Cole. 281 North Main.
I'll abstain.
Next up is James Dorset, 29 North Brooklyn Ave. If you could just state your name.
James Dorset,
Could you spell
D as in David, O as in Oscar, R as in Robert, S as in Sam, E as in Edward, T as in Tom, T as in Tom, E as in Edward.
Thank you.
You may-
29 North Brooklyn. Okay, I have a prepared statement here. I know I'm going to be well within the time limit, but at the end of the day, we're all human beings here, and I can tell you that the reason why I'm here is because I think that the perspective that I've experienced, not too many people know about, but it really needs to be measured against what the village is trying to do. I have firsthand knowledge of this because you're sitting all here in the building that I used to own. So I know about eminent domain. And like Mr. Tariq, I was also law enforcement. I served my community, my country, and we're made to feel like we're criminals. So this perspective is very important, and I know this is not going to be popular, but you have to hear it. I personally debated on whether I was going to do this or not. It's not abrasive, but it does offer a different perspective, and I just think that, I hope that he's treated a lot better than I was. I think that as an attorney, or whoever is skilled with this, they know that there's absolute defects in the public domain law, the eminent domain law. I didn't even get a day in court. So we're not going to talk about my case because there's similarities there. But if you keep doing this, where does it stop? So I'm just going to give you my experience on this. Greetings and good afternoon. I'm James Dorset and I reside in Wellsville for nearly a decade. I've previously served my country and community. I recently became aware of the story regarding Mr. Otero's property conflict situation with the village, another eminent domain case. Understandably, as much as I'm reluctant to be in this building for any reason, I'm here today to bear witness in support of Mr. Otero's position in this matter. He has demonstrated an upstanding character and background. This building was seized by the Village of Wellsville through eminent domain in 2016 under controversially questionable circumstances. I was a previous owner and speak from personal experience. I was denied fair due legal process, check the record, or to have a single day in court to defend my rights and property. It was unconscionable abuse of authority. That being said, I have a few brief comments to address. A, public opinion consensus part of this hearing. B, Mr. Otero's situation with objective comparison. C, the personal sense of loss and severe consequences I've experienced. And D, the Village of Wellsville's past and present conduct regarding eminent domain. Public opinion. I've seen no credible reason that the village places any redeeming value on public or individual opinion unless they acknowledge who is having a certain influential status in the community. This hearing is merely a procedural formality. They will attribute or interpret any prior or pattern low attendance by the residents here as a lack of general interest. After that, the usual follow-up and direct course of administrative action is decided arbitrarily behind closed doors in their favor. After a decade of residing here, I've observed that this has become an established pattern of doing business on their terms. Regarding Mr. Otero, this is why we're here today in this hearing. On this controversial issue of eminent domain, another ultimatum from the village of imposed property seizure forced upon Mr. Otero, just as previously happened to me with this building. The village has refused and rejected a reasonably nominal $500 per month charge to use land, which is part of its property for public parking. There are some places in the state where a single parking space rents for nearly twice that amount. Where is the urgent need or adverse harm to the community where eminent domain is the only recourse above other available options to address parking in this specific location? The village seeks to deprive Mr. Otero of his rightful and legal use of his own property. Eminent domain, the whole village. Here we go again. As for my situation, I've never recovered from the severity of losing my property caused by the circumstances attributed to and the predatory, non-empathetic actions the village administration has taken. To a consequentially severe degree, my livelihood was ruined, and as a potential business owner, and my emotional state has been permanently scarred with continuing PTSD and lingering associated duress. A cup of coffee, words of encouragement, and a pat on the back will not remedy an aggrieved sense of loss. I can't even begin to relate or convey all the details involved in this moment. However, I have a full online overview regarding exactly what the village did in my case, and I have a website here. If anyone's curious about confirming factual credibility in this matter. And lastly, regarding the Village of Wellsville and their pattern of pursuit of eminent domain. These issues of seizing property this way will likely continue at the will and deliberateness of the village's arbitrary judgment and predictable course of actions. A major reason for this is they have adopted and practiced policies by conduct that defies or dismisses entirely any measure of accountability. Add to this selective enforcement, disregard for any factual evidence and disagreement with their policy positions, the evident bias that they never seem to be in error. It's automatic that they are presumed 100% correct on every issue, all the time, every time. I wonder what their explanation is for the building across the street. In conclusion,
You may be seated, thank you.
thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ralph Lorigo.
My name is Ralph Lorigo, L-O-R-I-G-O. I'm an attorney, and my office address is 101 Slade Avenue in West Seneca, New York.
Thank you, you may begin.
So, look, I need to address the board. The village trustees are making a terrible decision if you vote for eminent domain. Every resident in this village needs to be aware that, first of all, my client owns this property. He purchased this property. He renovated this property. He put tenants in this property. He's a taxpayer in this town. My client offered to work with this village, allowed the village to spend, or to rent the 30 parking spaces for $500 a month. In effect, that's 55 cents a day per spot. I checked your parking meters. It's 50 cents an hour. This is 55 cents a day is the way he allowed the village. Instead of accepting that offer, you've spent $4,200 for an appraisal. As a lawyer who practices in real estate for now 49 years, that seems like an awful lot of money to me. You've hired the most expensive law firm in Buffalo. Hudson Russ charges up to $970 an hour. And you've got a long way to go from here. You will have to compensate Mr. Otero for the real value of that property. I'll get to that in a second. That could easily be 6 figures. You're going to take his property off the tax rolls. You're going to have to lower his assessment if you take his property. And you will more than likely have to pay attorneys to litigate the fair market value of this property for the next few years. All this falls on the burden of the taxpayers in your village. Recently, your village was awarded $4.5 million for redevelopment. Is this how you want to spend your money? Wouldn't it be better to spend this money on roads, villages, as grants or low-income loans to the people to improve their properties along the way? I can't understand why the village would need this space going through this purpose. Look, New York has the most liberal eminent domain statute in the country. And that is the slippery slope. Because you want something doesn't give you the right to use government's heavy hand by taking it from private individuals who don't want to sell it through the eminent domain process. And like I say, you've got a long way to go from here. This is the slippery slope that encourages any board to simply take private property when they have a disagreement with a property owner or feel they can somehow benefit from the property. It's wrong, and this board shouldn't allow it. My client came here and decided this village was going to be his home. This is where he wanted to be. The last time I was here, I was explaining to him, was roughly 50 years ago when I was in the National Guard and you had floods here, and we came to clean up the village. This is a beautiful village. He came here, he settled here because of that. He invested his money